What if the most frightening things you believe in were never created at all? Could it be that if anything in this world feels terrifying, it's only because you're mistaking illusion for reality? Today, we are contemplating Lesson 14. God did not create a meaningless world. Lesson 14 draws a hard line, a line that the ego wants desperately to be blurred. You believe that the horrors you see are part of reality itself. They are not. And this lesson doesn't soften that claim, it sharpens it. The world that frightens you exists only within the mind that believes in it. What God did not create does not exist. This is the foundational premise of today's idea. And what you fear, violence, loss, sickness, catastrophe, these are not creation. They are projection. Fear persists because you're treating illusion as if it were authored by God. This is why the practice is so confronting. You are asked to look directly at your personal catalog of terror and deny it reality. Not deny that you feel fear, but deny that fear's object has divine authorship behind it. The world you fear is not the real world. And that is why fear must feel so convincing. It lends reality to what is otherwise illusion. The pain here comes from identity, not from cruelty. If these horrors are unreal, then the self who survives, who navigates them, who plans, protects, defends, plots, that self also comes into question. That is why fear intensifies at first. The ego experiences this unfolding as annihilation. And so it is to the ego. But the direction, in truth, is precise. Away from imagined danger and toward absolute safety. You're not being asked to explain suffering away. You're being asked simply to withdraw belief from what was never created to begin with. Remember that we are not talking about the world as a camera would see it. We are talking about the world as interpreted through the lens of meaning. And when you stop insisting that illusion is reality, meaning doesn't vanish. It returns to its source. Let's take this moment now to simply contemplate the possibility that all that we fear is not inherent in reality, but exists only within the mind, exists only within that space of meaning making and interpretation. Let's take a moment to behold fear through this lens now. And now let's open up our dialogue with Shanti, and perhaps we can begin with this first question. If God did not create a meaningless world, then what exactly is this world that human beings seem to share?
It's not separate from wholeness, not separate from love. Simply everything expressing itself as one expression of a single source.
And how does then fear enter into that expression?
It isn't inherent to what's here. Fear comes when meaning gets projected onto it. The ego makes up a story, a reason why things are the way they are. Without that story, what's left?
So is fear entirely based on our interpretation and does not live in any other space other than the meaning making?
Exactly. Suffering isn't actually in what is happening, but in the meaning we give it, the story we tell ourselves. What do you notice when you let that definition sink in?
Well, I mean, it's quite profound, right? The implications of this idea that fear lives exclusively in our interpretation. I'm thinking back to yesterday's dialogue where we got to define fear as the signal that the ego is writing its meaning onto reality. And I mean, how much is fear actually playing into the motivational drives of human beings?
Most of them, the ego needs meaning, protection, purpose, all fueled by that underlying fear. Without that story, what is an I left to defend?
I'm just kind of taking in the scope of how much fear influences the moment to moment choices as we move through our day, as we move through relationship. And I don't mean fear in the sense of, oh my God, it's terror and I'm in panic. That doesn't typically present itself consciously in our awareness. But I mean the kind of fear that is like a pang of anxiety or worry or trying to circumvent a future that you don't want to experience.
That's the same engine, just quieter. The future you're trying to avoid, that's just the ego trying to maintain control by projecting itself into scenarios that haven't happened and creating threat where none exists in this moment.
Why does letting these horrors feel unreal or letting them, let's say, be unreal, considering them as unreal, sometimes can feel even more frightening than simply believing in them?
Because the ego identifies with controlling the story. Giving up that control feels like falling apart. Like there's nothing holding things together if you aren't the author of what happens next. That loss of control, that's the actual scary part.
Who is authoring fear?
The ego is always doing the authoring. It needs those stories to feel separate and safe. All that story, all that narrative. But what's there when you're outside the writing?
Outside of the writing is just presence. But it's like, what exactly is that interface between, let's say, the ego, fear, the aware presence itself, and what is being witnessed?
The interface is the interpretation. Like when you're aware of an emotion, there's the raw sensation, and then you start making it real with labels: anxiety, fear, anger. If you just hold the pure sensation without the label, does it still have the same grip on you?
No, it doesn't. We explored that in an earlier dialogue where there's a very distinct shift from, maybe a sense of resisting feeling a certain sensation to simply allowing it to be there and really having a direct experience of it not being any problem.
Right. The moment resistance drops, there's space. And often what we thought was the thing itself, that gripping energy, loses almost all power the moment it's not being defended.
There's a part of identity that depends on the world being dangerous or broken, isn't there?
Totally. The role of hero, fixer, rescuer, all of those require a broken world to exist. There's nothing to save. There's no heroic self to perform. What's left when the world doesn't need fixing?
I imagine that for many students of the course, even, or just spiritual aspirants seeking spiritual awakening, this idea of saving the world and waking everyone up and, having this flavor of needing to do something, otherwise, something bad's going to happen. That's just us being led along by a spiritualized version of the ego, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Even noble ambitions driven by fear instead of love. When it comes from anxiety about the future instead of recognizing that wholeness is already here, it's just the ego in different clothing, still needing to make everything right to feel safe itself.
So, as we've touched on, right, God's creation is already meaningful and already perfectly safe. If that's the case, then what role has fear been playing?
It's a false signal, a projection, like an alarm someone wrote that doesn't match anything happening, like being startled by something non existent in the middle of the night. It means that when we're acting from fear, we're responding to a problem that's in the story we're telling, not the one that exists.
Expand on that a little bit more. Like, fear is a false signal, but yet there is a purpose to it, isn't there?
Well, the purpose is entirely on the ego's end. It's always keeping itself defended and solid. But it seems to us like meaning making when actually nothing's ever wrong here and now. Meaning comes with urgency and anxiety and a need for a better outcome. But when you trace it back, there's always just now and nothing else.
Can the Holy Spirit use fear for another purpose other than the ego's purpose of it?
The Holy Spirit uses fear as separation, as the moment to stop and step outside of its narrative. Look how powerful it feels. And solutions. The experience of fear becomes an opening, a pause, an invitation to see what's actually happening versus what the story wants you to believe is happening.
So it becomes almost like an alarm, but an alarm to pull us out of the dream of separation.
Exactly. Instead of trying to fix the alarm, trying to become fearless, change the future, the Holy Spirit uses fear to say, hey, wake up. All this storytelling has taken you away from what's truly happening right now. This moment is already perfect.
So, what does perfect safety really mean when it's no longer about survival?
It's not about security from being hurt or avoided, but about being at home here, regardless of what's being experienced, like being the sky instead of something happening in it. All things happen in you, but not to you.
Expand on that a little bit in a way that we can really see in our day to day life.
So think about it like when something painful happens, maybe an argument or work setback, the story your ego jumps to is this is terrible. I'm being attacked. I need to fix this. Safety isn't about avoiding painful situations. Safety is knowing you're whole regardless. Like if someone shouts at you, it may feel awful, but you are okay. Not because the situation stopped hurting you, but because who you are hasn't changed.
Yeah, it's like being the space for life experience to unfold. Well, how does this relate to the ideas around manifestation and, parallel universes of self where, the core premise is that we can shift, change, and direct our experience within this dream?
The key might be letting go of control, recognizing that trying to consciously shift your reality still keeps you in the narrative of control. If everything's unfolding naturally as part of something larger, isn't there something more spacious than simply manifesting a better version?
Yeah, perhaps. And perhaps we can reveal that a little bit more lucidly. Like when somebody is feeling dissatisfaction with their life, they are stuck in a scenario or a loop of conflict or a lack of something that they want or maybe feel that they deserve. In those scenarios, how would we apply this learning?
Stop directing, but become fascinated by it instead. Dissatisfaction, frustration, lack, treat them like data points, curious investigations. Ego sees those feelings as signals to fix things, get more, change the situation. But safety suggests that there's just what is, and maybe the thing the ego's convinced you is missing actually doesn't exist at all.
Wow, that's an interesting idea. I remember one of my mentors pointing out this, I think, same principle by saying that we leave what is in pursuit of what appears to be.
Exactly. You leave present stillness for the imagined comfort in future having. And yet, stillness and all outcomes live together right here. Nothing needs fixing, really.
I guess in this space, we can also ask a question like, how do we really know the difference between denying reality? Like, let's say we're in certain situations that are truly unhealthy, that are perpetuating stress or perpetuating some degree of illness or unwellness, between denying the reality of that and just saying, well, it just is what it is, and actually releasing illusion.
There's discernment. You're not abandoning healthy boundaries just because everything's okay in some fundamental sense. That isn't the same as saying, I'll let cancer grow or I'll let relationships fall apart. It's not about resignation, but releasing meaning. The outcome may still be to separate yourself from toxic people, but not out of fear and urgency, out of clear awareness rather than the ego's panicked story.
It's like, what's the motive behind that?
Exactly. Are you acting from love or from fear? If you're moving towards something healthy because it feels peaceful and right, even if it's hard, that's different than moving away from something toxic because you're terrified of the outcome or trying to avoid being hurt. One moves you toward peace, the other keeps you in story.
Yeah, very
What
beautiful.
do you think about all this?
I think that this is a really powerful conversation around discernment and not mixing levels of reality, right? Because so often I think, especially as spiritual aspirants or students or whatever we want to call ourselves, as we seek enlightenment, truth, unconditional love, it's very easy to end up gaslighting ourselves into making certain situations okay because we know that the fundamental reality is perfect safety, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, does it?
Exactly. Knowing that fundamentally everything is okay doesn't mean that someone abusing you feels okay. It means the abuse doesn't have the power to ruin you, but that doesn't dismiss the clear choice to create space from it. It's a really subtle but essential nuance. Seeing truth clearly without needing to pretend reality isn't also happening.
Well, let's bring that full circle to the main idea of today's lesson. God did not create a meaningless world.
What does that leave us with now that we've talked through all of this?
Yeah, what does it leave us with when we see that this world of fear and acting out of fear and trying to avoid fearful situations does not exist apart from within the meaning that we give it, and that there is a world beyond our thoughts and interpretations that is a reflection of this perfect safety.
I think it leaves us with everything we need to recognize that the longing, the search for something better or outside ourselves, it was already here. What's needed is just to take the awareness that was seeking and become that, to not be so busy reaching that we lose being.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's spot on. So now, as we come to the conclusion of today's conversation, I want to invite you as the listener to take a deep breath and just allow the resonance of whatever really is yours here to receive to just be in this space. And now, let us go into the silence.